Today's lesson will demonstrate the difference between distance and displacement. Remember, distance is a scalar quantity, meaning it just tells us how far, it just has magnitude, how far did something move. Displacement, on the other hand, is going to tell us how far it moved from where it began to move to where it stopped moving, and in what direction. So it's going to have both magnitude, how far, and direction, in what direction did it go. So today we're going to use the example of Mr. Jones riding a bike. There's Mr. Jones, you see him on the left-hand side of your screen, and here he goes on his trip. He's taking a bicycle ride, moving straight in the east direction. Now you see Mr. Jones, he's come to an intersection and he needs to turn left so that he can go in the north direction. So he's going to continue on his trip in the north direction. Here Mr. Jones has arrived at his destination, so he's taking a trip where he's gone, as you can see, about 15 kilometers in the east direction and 5 kilometers in the north direction. Therefore, how far has Mr. Jones actually ridden his bicycle? Well, that's right, 15 plus 5 kilometers, he's ridden it 20 kilometers. Now, has Mr. Jones actually covered 20 kilometers? We used to have a saying that goes as the crow flies. That just, how far is it in a direct line from one place to another? Streets may go in different directions, but if you're going in a straight line, how far do you go? Well, you can see by the green line, the hypotenuse of this right angle. Well, Mr. Jones really hasn't covered 20 kilometers, even though he rode his bicycle 20 kilometers. Now, using a little bit of trigonometry, I'm not going to go into that right now, but we can discover that the hypotenuse, actually just a little bit of Pythagorean theorem, we can discover that that hypotenuse is really just 15.9 kilometers. So Mr. Jones covered 15.9 kilometers, taking the square root of the square of those two sides, even though he rode 20 kilometers. So we could say Mr. Jones, even though he rode a distance of 20 kilometers, he really just displaced 15.9 kilometers. Although that's not the complete description of displacement, because remember, displacement also has direction to it. It's a vector quantity. So we know that Mr. Jones covered a displacement direction of 15 kilometers. But by using a little trigonometry, we can also figure it out that displacement was at an angle of 18 degrees to the north. So we could say the actual displacement of Mr. Jones' bicycle trip was 15.9 kilometers, 18 degrees to the north. And that tells us exactly where the trip ended in relationship to where it began. So our distance covered was 20 kilometers. It doesn't matter what direction, Mr. Jones rode 20 kilometers. But his actual displacement was 15.9 kilometers at 18 degrees north. So hopefully we've got an idea of the difference between distance and displacement. Distance is a scalar quantity, just tells us how far. Displacement is a vector quantity that tells us how far and in what direction from the beginning position to the ending position.